Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We are your hosts, Kristen and Karan. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
Today we're talking with Sam Conniff. To our listeners, Sam is probably best known as the author of Be More Pirate, which he calls a love letter to change makers and rule breakers. But Sam has so much more on his list of accomplishments, from co-founding the youth-led, purpose-driven, multi-award-winning social enterprise marketing agency Livity, to Digify Africa, Live Magazine, somehwereto, Don't Panic, Dubplate Drama, and Uncertainty Experts, which after taking the quiz online, I now know I have a low tolerance to uncertainty. Sam has been out in the world creating good trouble and leading many a social rebellion. So Sam, we are really excited to be chatting with you today on what is our 100th episode of Pirate Living Podcast, which seems only fitting since Be More Pirate has been our inspiration, not only for this podcast and everything it stands for, but the changes that Kristen and I have made to charting our own courses in life. So welcome, Sam, our OG pirate captain.
Thank you both very, very much. But you know that I'm here because of my respect and love for you and seeing what you've managed to achieve. I didn't know that this was going to be the 100th episode. You didn't let me know that. So what a wonderful bit of, I don't know, let's just call that a sign that this was meant to be. So congratulations, you two, on taking it this far. Thank you very much indeed for having me.
Thank you. It was just a really happy coincidence.
Yeah, it was.
That's tremendous.
So I've listed off many things that you've been involved in. And what we would like to start is for you to just kind of introduce yourself and really tell us about your pirate journey and how all of this started.
Okay. Well, why don't we can reverse into it a little bit, because it's disingenuous when it gets read out like that, and it's necessary, I suppose. But you know, when I write my bio, you know, you write your own bio, and it's weird writing yourself in the third person. Sam has achieved so much, and from where I sit, you know, without being negative, there's just an incredibly long list of things going wrong, and you kind of touched on it there. I find myself amidst a world at the moment of science, which is something that I've felt like I've continued to feel like a huge imposter in. I'll never forget my GCSE science teacher telling me my atoms would amount to nothing. But I'm here in a world of exploration and uncertainty. I'm now running the world's largest ever piece of research into the human impact of uncertainty because of Be More Pirate. You know, Be More Pirate taught me about change in a way that I never really understood. And then something happened, and thousands of people around the world started creating change. And I struggle with that. I've often struggled with responsibility and accountability and finding my place within it. And when other people began changing things on the back of the book, I struggled with that too. And so my explorations in uncertainty is a direct follow-up, you know, encouraging people to create change. Then you need to kind of create some lights to how you navigate change. And Be More Pirate, you know, continues to confound me and amaze me in the stories that I receive. And it's still on a regular basis. Someone's just found the book just at the point that I can be critical of it or wonder how I could have made it better or done things differently. And with that too, you know, I very proudly handed over to a new captain a couple of years ago. Alex Barker runs the community better than I ever could, with an outlook that such a powerful woman as she would only have, that I never could have had. So, you know, all these things are kind of mistakes and chance and making our best effort, dressed up as success at the end of it when we write our bios. But in the time, it's just, I think there's something to talk about in the book, right? There's no great success that comes without mess. And when I look retrospectively, all I ever see is the mess. So I'm once again in the swamp of negative capability. And it all comes from that place, Livity. Livity I started when I was just 20. And I didn't know at the time, but it was a subconscious attempt to put right some of the fucked up shit that was going on when I was a kid, and I was trying to write the right lives of other young people. And it took me years to work out that it was this kind of subconscious exposition. But what happened is those young people taught me more than anyone ever has, and that bit wasn't a mess. And it's those young people are the ancestors of the pirates that you and me love, because they were all guys on the edges of society. They taught me so much, and they showed me how to really rewrite rules. And in the heart of uncertainty experts now, yes, one hand of it is scientists, but I'm also interviewing and learning from refugees who've become CEOs, gang leaders who've become business leaders, people who've transitioned gender, survived the justice system, gone through mental health issues, been prisoners of war, and have gone on to become leading lights. So to me, it's a red thread through the whole thing, always looking just like you for ordinary people doing remarkable things, but hopefully in so doing, shining a light so others can too.
I want to rewind a little bit to Be More Pirate. And how did you come up with the whole like pirate analogy for life in your book?
It always been there. The core of Livity is these incredible young people. In the early days of that business, it was more kind of social intervention. I would be hands-on, helping kids through court processes, through housing situations. And it was only over the years that we evolved and graduated, and we started having full-time youth workers and careers, facilities for those young people. And then many, many more young people could come through, right? Lots and lots. And on the other end of the spectrum, we'd have these big clients, commercial opportunities, so we could connect these young people with real life opportunities. It wasn't youth work or community work in isolation. And so my job was to try and help them transition. And I discovered I was fairly multilingual. I could spend genuine time with predominantly inner city young Black male teenagers, and that's clearly not me. But they trusted me after time, and I trusted them, and we found a very strong connection. But I can also handle my own in a very white male boardroom, and so I became this conduit, and that was kind of one of my skills. And so in speaking to these young people and trying to encourage them to hold on to their identity, not to code switch, but to understand the new world they were navigating, I often used pirates as a metaphor. And I don't know why. It's just always been there, and rebellion's always been part of my life. And I wanted to encourage them to have some swagger as they did this brave thing. And then as I was leaving Livity, and I ran it for nearly 20 years, I decided I was going to try and write a book. And again, that was about breaking rules. I'm dyslexic. I didn't make it to university. I'm very non-academic. And I thought, this is what a grown-up should do now. This is the hardest thing I could do, and it scares me. And so I started writing a book about what I passionately believe, that extractive capitalism is on the wrong side of history, and that we all, every single one of us who gets up every day, has a role to play in this, unpicking this mess. And a business, really could be a massive gateway conduit to things being a hell of a lot better. And I started to write the most boring book ever. It was called Purpose First, and it was the book that a near midlife crisis guy writes to try and prove that he's smart and grown up. And I literally remember writing sentences thinking, oh yes, that'll sound good. And then I brought it back to my guys, my young people, my entrepreneurs, my pirates. And I said, can I read a few chapters? Because it's really weird the way books are written, off in isolation. I said, we go back to co-creating and doing this together? And they said, sure. And I read them some, and they said, God damn, what's happened to you, Granddad? Why are you so boring? And one guy just said, literally, where are all the pirates? His name was Callum. And I wrote that down. I went back to my desk, and I just sat there, where are all the pirates? And I started to question myself, where does this metaphor come from? Why do I believe in this so much? And because I had a bit more time on my hands, I was transitioning out of the business. I went to the British Library, and then I went to the Greenwich Maritime Museum, and I pulled some resources and a story. I didn't write it. I've drawn on as much history as I can. It wrote itself. And as I read more, I just couldn't believe that no one had ever told this story. So I just tried to do it justice. And I felt like a race. It was like with every new discovery and every new bit of history I found, I thought, why has this never been told? This has to get out, or someone else is writing it right now and they're going to get out before me. So it became this mission that I was on to find it. So yes, it very much came out of a genuine discovery, a deep metaphor that I think lots of us hold, this kind of romantic relationship, and then my own transition, my own step into the unknown. And I was so grateful they were there to catch me and find me.
And Callum.
Yeah, and still Callum. Yeah, he deserves his credit. They all do, and as I try to give them more credit in the book, they were my original pirates, those smart young people, and their inspiration lives on.
I've loved
How about you? So
how about us? Us what?
So how did you find your way to the book, and why did it have such a profound effect on you? You know, it's been 100 episodes later, and you guys say it better than I do. When you did that intro, I nearly cried. I was like, oh, yeah, sometimes I forget exactly. I was like, yes.
I think it was through Mark England.
Mm.
So we are both, I don't know if you know Mark England and the Enlifted community. I know Alex has gone through the training and been involved with the community. But basically it's a coaching.
Oh, yeah, I know. She spoke very, very highly about it. I heard about it as she was going through it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I met her through it.
Yeah, that's how we met her. Yeah. So that was our required reading.
Right.
That was
he said, buy this book.
Yeah. And Mark England, I mean, you should really meet him. He's all about pirate as well. So we really took that pirate theme, got a pirate flag flying everywhere, and you know, that's what the program was all about, is just you know, stepping outside the norm and becoming pirates and doing things differently within, I guess, the coaching sphere and our own lives. So yeah, we learned about it because of Mark making that book, kind of our textbook, if you will, for the program. And yeah, I listened to it on audio, so I feel like I've heard your voice for so long now, such a familiar voice. So
that's always a nice thing, isn't it? There's something about audio that cuts to the soul. It's a lovely, lovely thing. I love it. You know, and I the exact same podcast you listen to. It's the same as you two. I know you two more through my ears than anywhere else. But that was how the book got introduced. What nerve did it connect with? You know, deep down, have you always been rebels? What in your soul did it connect, kept it going this long?
Well, I would say for me, and always been rebels. No, in a way. Maybe like I mean, there's been little parts of me. I have 2 older siblings and a younger sibling. So there's always been parts of me that have been like, I don't want to be like everybody else in my family. But as far as rebelling, I was very much a rule follower for much of my life. But when I was reading the book, like after a while, it was just like, it's in my face. I'm going through it page after page. But I was teaching at the time, in childcare, but I'd gone to school for elementary education. I've been in education in various different ways. And I'm reading the book and I'm like, the Department of Education has to go down. Like, this is what I want to go. And then I'm reading through the book and I'm like, oh, okay, you got to take small steps. Can't take down the whole entire Department of Education, or I'm just going to get overwhelmed with getting nowhere. But yeah, I loved reading through it and going, oh, okay, like I can do things. I can make changes. And it, like this book found me very recently after I'd started making personal changes myself and realizing that I'd been living inside of a box. I wanted change, but I didn't know how to make it happen. So for me, it was like almost like a guidebook for, okay, I can do this. I can make these steps. And ultimately it led to me creating my children's books and Language Ninjas. And so my small step, instead of being take down the Department of Education, is how can I get a new message to kids, and how can I get a new message to parents, eventually educators as well. But yeah, that was my where it struck for me, was in that area.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad it found you at the right time. And what about you?
Very similar. Very much grew up a rule follower, Catholic school. Then I was a police officer. When I immigrated to Canada, got into like the environmental industry, and found I was climbing a corporate ladder that just, I had my ladder was up against the wrong wall. And I think what really, I mean, you talk about this in the book, it just gave me permission to like do what was best for me rather than do what was expected and the safe thing. So taking a chance to go in on like my own passions, which is health and fitness, and in particular women's health, which is something that I think, at least at the time, was very overlooked. It definitely has more attention now. And just encouraged me to, you know, I started small, working part-time, doing the education, and eventually during the pandemic, quitting my corporate job and going all in on being an entrepreneur and working for myself and trying to serve the women of my community. And I think it really is that like permission and that chance to take a leap into that uncertainty, because man, there was a lot of uncertainty to quit like a good paying corporate job in the middle of a pandemic when gyms were closed and but knowing that I could no longer go forward with the life I was leading. Just having that eye opener.
It's so wonderful hearing you both say that. And again, this was my fear at the beginning when I started hearing from people saying, I've started this, or I've left that. I was like, shit, wait a minute. I was just making it up. And my instinct was to retract, right? But I wasn't making it up. You know, the book is a love letter and in many ways to myself. I went back and read the final chapter a little while ago, and I remember exactly where I was, and I was writing that to me. And in exactly the same thing, you know, Livity was such a great thing. We won these awards. We saw these kids transform their lives, and it was so powerful. It became my identity, and from someone who had a broken family, like it became parts of family as well. And for like both of you, stepping outside, you know, there's extrinsic and intrinsic change, and when they both come along at once, it's pretty overwhelming. And then there's this funny thing of potential, right? And I think it's such a difficult thing to say, to determine what your potential is. I wonder if you know. I find it very hard. I find that a hard question. What is your potential? But what Be More Pirate seems to do, if I had to sum it up in the thousands of conversations I've had in one word, and it's not the word I would have chosen, but it's that people, it's a euphemism or even a proxy for people giving themselves permission. And that makes, you know, I couldn't be more proud when I hear someone who has told their boss, "I've just got to be more pirate about it." You know, there's a rebel cry to that. But what it means is I've just given myself permission to try something out. And that's like, it's amazing that that's the missing ingredient in life and change, isn't it? You know, the deep down we can feel change needs to happen. We can contextualize it. We can see it. We can cognitively understand it. But stepping over the threshold, you know, let's be pushed or have someone to pull us, to give ourselves permission. And that seems to be as well, you know, I talk a lot in the book about the rules, and I was hypothesizing as to what the rules are going to be. And I always worried at the end of the book, you know, because I didn't know what was going to happen with it. Like it became very theoretical towards the end, hypothesis almost. But again, in hearing the stories back and in my own example and in what I've just heard from you, it does feel like again and again, I wonder if this is true of the people that you've spoken to, all 99 of my forebearers. The number one rule everyone seems to need to break is not the outside ones, it's the internal ones. And the number one rule we all need to break is our own limiting beliefs. Is that true? Is that what you've heard from people, do you think?
Yeah, I think like one of the things that we hear time and time again from people is to really question what it is that you want out of life. And I think we can go for, I don't know, 40 years without actually questioning what it is that we want. And then having the I don't want to say courage to go for it, right? Figure out what you want and then take those small steps towards it. Like there's that idea of like, what if I fail, right? And two things with that that we've learned is, what if you succeed? So switching that like what if question the other way, the way around. But also, you know, when I started coaching, I failed a lot of times. And were those failures or were they just learning points, right? And so I think a lot of people see that they try something once, maybe twice, and it doesn't go the way that they want. And they're like, well, that doesn't work, so I'm going to go back to whatever is safe. And I'm not saying it's easy to take those chances and to, you know, live on the edges of the map as you would, but it's worth it in the end. And to understand those failures are learning points or pivot points, like, cool, that didn't work. I'm going to change and do something slightly different. I'm going to adjust my course. But in general, I'm still kind of sailing in the same direction, if you want to use like the pirate metaphors, right?
Of course we do.
So like the whole idea of just figuring out, what do you want? What problem do you want to solve? What change do you want to see in the world? And then taking some actions. I think that is probably one of the more common ones that we've heard from people.
And there's so much good stuff tied up in there. We should definitely use all the metaphors we can. All three of us are in the same podcast, and then we can come back and play pirate metaphor bingo at the end.
Exactly.
Ding. It's funny, isn't it? Because you skipped for a second on using the word courage or bravery, and you went to fear. I think that's my tendency too. I found this in the research we've been doing, because bravery can be a bit of a false construct, right? And we say it and it sounds like the right thing to be, but then we get there and I'm still scared. So I'm a bit confused. I'm trying to be brave, but actually I'm really scared. And there's this terrible scientific test where they removed the fear receptors in a bunch of rebus monkeys. It's weird to think that kind of shit still happens in science, but none of them lasted more than 72 hours. There's a very rare condition that some people are born without fear receptors, and they don't do so well either. And I'm pretty convinced that the work is to be able to walk with fear, taking it with us like a puppy. In fact, one of the interviews I did in Uncertainty Experts, a guy who came out of addiction and now runs one of the most successful rehab programs. He says, you never get rid of the fear. But what I've learned to do is put it in my back pocket, because at least in my back pocket, it pushes me forward. And I like that. That to me felt much closer to because there's that thing, isn't there, when we talk about it in the book, and I know that I passionately meant it. And for me at the time, writing the book was facing my biggest fear. But when you really do deep down get a grasp of that, I think I've only latterly understood it, because whatever those really deep-seated fears are, they sit subconsciously, because they as you said, it uses up so much energy, right? It's so costly to have that out all the time. But then it means that it's the small things that are triggering them, and that's why going back towards the fear. I mean, I knew I meant it in the book, but I didn't know how important it was, because it turns out there's just nothing as tiring as being scared. Like, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? But like, being brave actually expends less energy than being scared. And there's that funny thing about being the change. I think the thing that stops us there is also fear, because it takes quite a dose of ego, to actually, you want to be the change, but to believe that you can be in this great big world when often we feel so small. That's a different kind of bravery, and that's probably the most uncomfortable one, I think, of all, or I find it so.
And there was another kind of saying from some of our coaching community is to be unreasonable with what you want. And I remember when we were talking about where do we want to go, where do we want to grow into, and putting forth what we call our perfect day. And my perfect day was almost literally what I was already kind of doing, but maybe a few more clients and a little bit more money, and just learning that I get to be unreasonable and to dream even bigger and to reach further and bigger, and giving yourself again permission to be unreasonable and with what you want into your life and how you want to see that change. So as a coach, I can work one-on-one with people and impact their lives and be the change that way, or I can write a book, or I can coach other coaches. And so starting to have that forward vision rather than just what's right in front of me, I think is a big thing as well. That really takes a lot to learn to be unreasonable with what you want out of your own life.
I think that's a very good phrase, and I can't remember exactly what the quote is, but something about people being unreasonable, by someone cleverer than me, who I can't even remember. So there we go. that one died. But there's it was being explained to me, evolution doesn't make predictions. We evolve right up to the second that we're in, but evolution doesn't go any further forward than that. So the change that's taking place naturally in us is only up to the minute we're in. So it takes something else to prepare ourselves for the what next, and then to actually shift ourselves to proactively evolve in preparation for it is really hard. And change has that tendency, doesn't it? It goes really, really slowly, and then all of a sudden it smacks you in the face. And that's usually the point. We miss it when it's going so slowly, or we don't want to come to terms with it, and then it smacks in the face, and then we have a different dynamic with it. Part of the reason why it's so stressful, I think. And so it is an unreasonable act to think that you can predict the future and then determine it. That takes a lot, I think. But talking of taking a lot, and you mentioned it in two of the things you said there about like there is an emotional cost to all this. How do you? I get asked this a lot. Are you always a pirate? And isn't it quite tiring? So how do how do you balance what's your pirate well-being plan? How do you balance that work pirate life balance?
Go for it, Kristen.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I would say like for me, the whole being pirate became me striking on my own and quitting, like Karan was saying, quitting a corporate job in the middle of a pandemic because I was very much in a position where they would have kept promoting me if I'd stuck around and been like, I'm going to leave. Just kidding. They would have continued to promote me just to keep me there. And I was like, no, I need to be done. But there came a point though, too, with the being done where eventually I'm like, okay, I'm building my own business. I'm doing these things, but I also need to give myself a sense of security and be around people and be in communities. So for me, like trying to find ways to, I started babysitting is what I ultimately started doing. So I can still do some of what I used to do, feel like I have my toes there while also being on my own and making my rules and choosing like, how am I going to show up in this? So for me, in a way, I'm like, it doesn't sound that big, but at the same time, I'm giving myself that ability to still do what felt good to me, what I enjoyed about what I did in my job, while being able to be on my own and bring support to myself. And letting myself know too, like, I can do this. I'm not taking steps backwards. I'm just going at a slower pace so I can maintain what I ultimately want to do. So
doesn't sound, I mean, and I hear that people say that a lot, and I wonder sometimes they say it to me, it's not that big a change, it's not that big a deal. And I'm always sitting there thinking, fucking hell, that sounds terrifying. Because it's just subjective, isn't it? I don't know what the fears in you are. I have a sense it sounds really brave. I think tackling young people in education and their parents is a minefield. I have kids and I'm very invested in education, and it's huge and demoralizing and overwhelming. So anybody taking that fight on, and I can, from the ninjas work, you've got even the one I can see in the background. That's incredibly powerful stuff. Getting kids to articulate emotions, to have that kind of language, it's huge.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And how many books published since then?
Two books and a journal, so 3.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well done.
Well, thanks.
I think the other part of like that work pirate life balance is giving yourself some rest between actions. So allowing for implementation and growth of whatever that thing is. So I find that I kind of work in stages. And like just a easy example is when I very first started coaching at a gym and doing personal training, and then I started offering nutrition coaching because that's where my passion is, which really led me into like women's health. So how nutrition, hormones, all of those things kind of interact, working one-on-one with women. And so I allowed myself time to figure that out because, like I said, when I started, I wasn't great at it. I didn't have a system. I didn't have anyone else in the gym that was already doing it. So I kind of just made shit up and figured it out. And once I got to a point where that was going well, right, I just gave myself time to figure that shit out while I was doing all the other things, like Kristen said, other part-time jobs to help with income and all of that. Then I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I got this kind of dialed in now. And so now I'm taking that and I'm scaling it and creating other nutrition coaches within our network. So what company can I like work with for training? What online platform works the best for scaling this? And now I've figured that out. And now I'm at the point I've got other coaches doing the training and growing that so that I can have another team that's out there also helping people, not just women now, but helping with nutrition. And I found that as soon as I had the groundwork laid out for that, I'm like already in my head, who else needs help? So pregnancy and postpartum, I'm like, you know what, these women need help, right? So I feel like once I get something going, I'm looking for the next thing of who else can I help and have an impact with. So I've definitely noticed the cycles now as I'm, a few years into this of like learning, figure it out, growth, scale it, get other people to help me. And then I need to go back to learning something new so I can like widen that net of who we're helping. So it started with nutrition. It went to peri and postmenopause for very selfish reasons because I want to know how to help myself. And then now just identifying who else in the female health sphere needs help that aren't necessarily represented and widely in the coaching community. So I find it very cyclical. I love the learning and building and implementation, and let someone else carry it from there. Start something and let someone else carry it on.
I mean, fucking hell, I didn't have a full scope of this, but you two are serious, right? If you're gonna try and take on education, but you're not just going to take it on as an institution, but take it on from the place that matters most, kids and their parents. And then you're going to take on, I mean, I can't even think of what the full scale would be, is the food industry. I mean, if you're trying to take on nutrition, I mean, the lack of knowledge and understanding, the advertising you're up against, the traditions, the norms, Jesus Christ. There's that terrifying survey, wasn't there, of American nutrition, where 87% of respondents who told that they risked cancer if they carried on eating the way they did, carried on eating the way they did, because, we're so ingrained in us. The tools that you're starting there are amazing. And there's some just great points you said there that I couldn't, I struggle still, get other smart people to help me. I certainly did that with Alex, and that's a testament to why the Be More Pirate community is there. And thankfully I did it with Livity, but it's probably still, it's something that I'm still trying to unlearn, that asking for help is a strength. That's not how I grew up perceiving the world. And when you say it, I'm like, yes, I want to be like that. that's the one. And I know that one of my rules I still have to challenge by is the overcommitment. And by God, the one I really want to challenge is the altar of productivity that society is still so wedded to, that leaves us in this place of eternally surfing the surface toppers of stuff. And what you described there, I think there's something about when you go deep on a topic, when you find something that is interesting, you said, for both of you, it started with you, and then you work on it and you go around, and you said the circles. I discovered recently, trying to write this course that I'm doing, that circle as a word is the basis of the word curriculum. And when we talk about curriculums of learning, all we mean is going around in a circle and then you discover what you need to know, and then you go deeper, but the same circle. So that's exactly what you're doing. And it feels sometimes like it's a different topic, but actually we're largely going around in this circle. And it was being explained to me by a rather wonderful, he's a relationship counselor actually at the moment, but he used to be a neuroscientist, and he's a remarkable guy. But was explaining to me that in even the word decide, the CIDE in decide comes from the same etymology as homicide or matricide or anything else, because it is a death. And to decide the thing that you're going to do, as you've both done, means the death of the thing that you were going to do, because life is finite. And so many of us are convinced that we can do it all. For both of you to decide to let go of the job, as you both described it, and all the things that come with it, means you had to call time on that and murder it to decide to do the things that you were going to do. And in there, I think it's rare, right? Especially at the moment. But when you find something that you're going to do and you go deep on it, and you develop some expertise and knowledge, whether that's a partner or a skill, or, for you two, the topics, I think that is where you start to find yourself, in there, not sometimes where we think it is. But I like that a lot.
Well, it also allows for a little bit of mastery.
Yeah.
Right? Which is something that's, I think, is really lost.
Yes.
So to have mastery of a subject is key. So then you can become the teacher and pass pass that on to someone else, right?
Absolutely. Right. So now we're getting another fucking rule that I really want to challenge at the moment is the predominance of simplicity being the pinnacle of all knowledge and communication. That if we're having any kind of conversation, if you can't put it into a 30-second explainer video, then it's not going to go anywhere. It just drives me mad in the increasing complex times that we're in, with ever more nuance and subjectivity and a greater understanding that our brains alone will never explain all this. And if we're not bringing our body to the party, then we're only at half the party. And then somehow give me a 30-second explainer of all this. What? And I think to the same kind of point, the pushback in some of this is there's time to get complicated. It's just time to get complicated, because handling difficult issues and going deep on the material prompts cognitive load, problem solving, critical reasoning and thinking. And half of our challenge is, we draw our news and information from ever shorter sources. We demand the simplification of it at the cost of what? And I think you're right. Mastery fits into exactly the same thing, finding out who and what we're supposed to be.
It reminds me, I did a sales and marketing course, and they're like, we had to come up with a 12-second elevator pitch. I'm like, how can I put everything I'm passionate about and that I want to do into 12 seconds? Like, I understand the concept of a 12-second, elevator pitch, but that was one of the more challenging things for me, is to distill it down into 12 seconds with it still being meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, there's 2022 research that says on social media now, you actually have, there was Facebook research said it was 2 seconds. Something else said it was 8 seconds. And I think we should trust them. But at what point, how long do you go, okay, great, right, okay, then I'll just try and condense it down. At what point do we say, no, fuck off? That is a ridiculous, no, thanks. If we're going to have an interesting conversation, I demand at least 32 seconds. What? It's such the acquiescence to that as the dominant narrative strikes me as definitely a rule that we should be putting within our sites. But it sounds like you already are. So
that's the great thing about podcasts, right? We actually get to have an hour-long conversation about something, and oftentimes that's not long enough. That's why we have many guests come back for a second time around. This great thing about having these more long-form conversations, so that we can do a deeper dive.
What's the biggest thing that you've learned then after 100 episodes? That is an achievement, guys. I'm very proud to be. And you know what then? When does the episode come out?
Oh, let's see. 98's next week. So I think we're doing some reruns in there too, just to give ourselves a little booster. And so a month maybe from now, most 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, holy moly, that will bring us to pretty much the 5th anniversary of Be More Pirate coming out, because it's the 1st of May. 1st of May is International Workers' Day, which is when the book came out in 2018.
Amazing.
So that's it's clearly meant to be.
It was.
So what do you reckon? What's the big thing, the main new perspective you have after 100 episodes of podcasting, pirate podcasting?
I would say that living and life out of the norm means very different things for different people. And there is degrees of piracy.
Yes.
It is a spectrum.
Yes.
It's such an internalized thing. If you're going against what your own social norms are, or what your own family or your own societal group thinks that you should be doing, that feels really big to you, and that is so different for everyone. So I think that would be the biggest thing I've learned, the spectrum of piracy.
Yeah, because we've got Franziska Elmer, who's very pirate with the climate change on one hand, and then we have people making those bold steps of just making a change that is completely opposite of what they grew up in, because it feels best to them. Which is a huge step.
Yeah, like
all on its
leaving
own. Mhm.
leaving a religious community and just striking out and living on their own as a single woman, right?
Yeah.
So like you might think like, oh, well, lots of women live on their own, but they also didn't like escape a very traditional, very closed religious community. So that is a big step for them, and a big thing that they did, leaving their family behind, all of those expectations, their community, especially your community is often tied up in like the church and stuff that you're with and your family. So what might from the outside seem like not hugely pirate is actually a really big deal when you kind of deep dive into that.
I'm going to take that line. I was about to ask you for permission, and I realized that would be ridiculous.
Considering
the company. Please, may I use your line of piracy in the spectrum? No, I shall just steal it. Yeah, because I often say in the response, the part being more pirate is subjective, and it can often be temporary. Sometimes it's a toolkit that you need to apply, but as a permanent state, it can be quite emotionally costly. And I think you're really, you spot on, Kristen. It is a very subjective thing, and we need to support people in that sense. And because often you will hear, oh, it's just a small thing, and it's not. It's, I mean, challenging any, and you described that really well. The binds of family and norms and culture are the strongest, and we, for some reason, judge this against large acts out in the world as if the person that's, I think I try to look to my own level of privilege and power as a white man in London in his 40s, with what I've done in the world, means that I have it, my tolerance for risk taking and rule breaking should be equal to that. And I should open doors with the power that I have wide enough and commensurate with what I've achieved that others can go through it. But, there are times in my life when I felt fucking burnt out and a real failure and a bit of an imposter. And in those moments, the rules that I want to break and challenge have to be commensurate with those moments too. And that feels, in my, and what you can't get caught up in is whether that's big or small, in inverted commas, relevant to anybody else. And then come back to the need to recharge and replenish, as we know our pirate heroes very much did. You go on the account and then you come off the account. That's just as important. And I'd like to just see where you go with that one, because it sounds that you're both very in touch internally, and you've clearly had, I haven't listened to all 99 episodes. I'm going to have to do that, aren't I, in the next because this conversation takes you beneath the surface quite quickly, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we're talking about limiting beliefs and changes in our lives, and exactly as you just said, the circumstances of people who have been repressed or held back emotionally or even physically, it starts to get into some uncomfortable places. And even just that level of discomfort is a rule or norm of society at large. And I think my journey with this, certainly, I've been surprised at some of the subconscious hooks and how deep they are that tend to hold me back. And I've gone around this a few times trying to look at it, from therapy to shamanic intervention. I've tried a few different things to try and get in touch with who I am, what we're supposed to be in, and they just run deep, don't they? Those inner layers of rules that we hold back. How do you manage that in the conversations that you have as pirates? Because we're professional pirates, right? We're not professional therapists.
I think part of it is just as you practice, so get the reps in, right? You get a lot more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so there's new levels with everything. There's levels to this shit. It's another thing that we always say. That the things that used to make you uncomfortable now, you get used to talking about them, and then it helps you to just continue to dig deeper. And I think, and I'll speak for Kristen and I, but the coaching, the program that we did and the type of coaching that we did was all about digging into those layers and finding those uncomfortable stories that people have, and working with those stories and helping them rewrite it. So I think just our training in that program, and we did a lot of training with Mark on this, what we call story work, is all about that. And it starts with digging into our own stories and finding our own uncomfortable places so that we can change the narrative and change how we feel about those things. So I think a big part of it has to do with coaching we did and just getting the reps in of being uncomfortable so you can get more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of uncomfortable words in there.
Yeah. And to add what you were saying too, Karan, about the getting to know yourself, like I find there are so many layers because I've done the coaching, I've done shamanic type work, and there's these fears at these base layers where I'm like, man, it's there again, and it's there in a different way. And so when you can start recognizing those things within yourself of like, all right, get to take a look at this from a new angle. It does also, like, again, showing up, being there to save yourself, being there to give yourself permission allows you also then to look at other people and say, I give you permission to be yourself and to do what you need to do. So giving yourself that permission first helps to open the door for other people to be like, okay, now you come, I give you permission to be yourself and give yourself that permission.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? So I still struggle with this like a lot. And then I hear you saying like, yeah, great, thanks. Give me permission, guys. Thanks so much. And there's stuff I've got to do this evening that I was like, oh no, yeah, you're so right. It's amazing, isn't it? How much we just need to hear it. And if you can hear it from yourself, then you kind of, you reach quite a special place. And if you can't, then how much we need pirates around us to hear it from. How much
I was just going to say, it also helps to have that crew. So like, Chris and I talk daily about whatever is going on. And, I always know that if I have something coming up or that, I'm hesitant about, like, we can talk through it, and I'll get that push to like, yeah, go for it, do it. Like, so having your pirate crew, someone that's on board with change and not playing it safe, is very helpful. Surround yourself with pirates.
Yeah, the people that hype you up.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have any books out there if it weren't for my support team. Like, first being encouraged by Mark England, Karan out here being like, yeah, Kristen, go. And then my husband, every time I wanted to stop, he's like, no, you've come this far, I'm not going to let you stop. Like, keep going. So yeah, without that crew, I would have 0 books written right now.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? The some of these trends, and your husband, hooray for him too. We didn't come this far to only come this far. And that's the same thing. Change is moving slowly, right? We don't even know fully the change that you've already instigated, but is already underway. It's about to surprise us with what we've done.
Momentum.
Where do you think sorry, go on.
Just a little momentum.
Yeah, exactly. There's wind in our sails. Where does it go next? What's in your what's leveling up in your sights now with all that you've achieved so far? What are you targeting for the rules that you're breaking?
Individually or as a podcast?
Both.
Okay. Kristen?
Okay. Well, yeah. So individually, other than I continuing with Language Ninjas writing the books, I have another book I'm also still working on, giving myself permission to actually finish writing. I know what the book I want it to be about. And then illustrations, hiring for those. But anyway, what I've noticed recently, I would say within the last 6 months, I had a friend reach out needing care for her daughter. And then now I have more people putting me in touch with working with their kids. And I didn't know that I would be going back to working individually with families and their kids. And in my mind, it's almost like, oh, I'm a babysitter. No, actually, I'm coming and I'm bringing something different. And what I can bring is this person now, this adult who can fully focus on the kids while also giving the parents what they need, which is time to themselves, so that me now being a person who can notice when I'm stepping in my own way, step back out of it and be like, okay, I'm here. I can offer this service to families. And it is doing something. It is big, where part of me wants to downplay and be like, I'm doing something small right now. So for like reminding myself that no, I'm here. I feel like big part of my role in being here in the moment I'm living on earth is to work with children, but also helping out the parents at the same time. So being able to realize that. So yeah, I I believe I was answering, but yeah, just realizing my role. Yeah.
Please do. As someone who has small children and desperately relies on sporadic childcare with people that I trust their lives with. You're not just looking for someone who's going to restrain them. I'm looking for someone who, you know, I want additional layers of positive influence in their lives. And so few and far between do you ever hear it talked about in terms of the parent and child relationship and understanding that, because oftentimes, you know, certainly the way culture is now, my kids don't see much of their extended family. So the people who are carers in my life are extended family, and I choose them very carefully for that important role.
Shaping the minds of the future, creating little baby pirates.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. We got to get in there young. What about you, Karen?
While you talk, I'm going to grab something.
Okay. Yeah, so I talked about scaling my nutrition program, which I actually have a information session booked at the end of April to kind of launch with the other coaches I have on my local team. And then working with our network partners to launch that to a bunch of other gyms internationally. So hopefully get more coaches dialed in on great nutrition coaching and offering that service to other people. And like I said, as that's already in the works, I already find myself doing some education into pregnancy and postpartum nutrition and training as well, coaching. So learning, while this seems to have like taken on its momentum and is growing and is spreading and it is scaling up, figuring out now, at least educating myself on another, we call it a subset of people. It's not actually that small of a portion of society that gives birth. And then I'll be figuring out how to do the same thing with that group of women, figuring out how I can grow and scale, training them and safely, pregnant and postpartum, and making sure that their nutrition is on point so that they can grow healthy babies.
As someone who's been close to the less good side of that in terms of both pre and postnatal depression, but also watching the challenges of women entering peri and menopause, and thankfully the conversation around it just in the last short few years has changed dramatically, but it still feels like a rebellion every time someone's bringing it to the table. And so more power to that for sure.
Yeah, okay, as someone whose family doctor is a female family doctor, I went to her for help and she tried to put me on antidepressants. And that really just, for me, was the catalyst. Again, we use our own experience. I already wanted to help women and with nutrition, but and fitness, but seeing that I wasn't going to get help from the general medical community really kind of spurred me on that one.
Right on. Well, see, there we go. You know, that thing of the what did you call it? The spectrum of piracy. What a spectrum we have, both beneath the surface. Oh, and then the big plan. So that was your personal ones. Let's wrap up with where's the podcast going? Another 100 episodes, or where are you going to go? To the moon?
Moon. I want to go there.
We have our wish list of folks that we want to speak to. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking for another 100. And I would like to meet Kristen in person. Believe it or not, we have never met in person.
No way.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, I'm in Canada. She's in the US.
Yeah. And the funny thing is it's like a 5 or 6 hour drive apart. But for when we met was in the middle of COVID. So for the first year and a half or so of knowing each other, the border was completely closed to us.
You know that's
So
not
close
the
yet
case
so far
anymore.
away.
What'd you say, Sam?
You know that's not the case anymore, though, don't you? You know
That's correct.
We do, and now the issue is that we just haven't picked the time. Karan works a lot.
I do. I have struggled with boundaries around work right now. Yeah.
Well, there is the rule. That's the thing. When we start getting deeper, that sounds like a rule that needs breaking. And the fact that really that's only a 2.5 hour drive each means,
That's true.
This is true. Seattle actually is, I think, a middle point.
Oh, really? Well, it is a fun place. That's the pirate meetup. That is the image that we all want to see.
Yeah,
there we go.
We often joke that like it, because I have a lot of dogs. That we joke that we haven't even sniffed each other's butts yet. So like maybe we don't even like each other. I don't really know.
That's wonderful. Well, what a great way to end on butt sniffing. On butt sniffing and kids, because as you were bringing up, I realized I have to
go
hotel, not just for the night for work, and I have to give my kids. And you made me think about my kids more. That whole point of we've got to bring up these little pirates. And
speaking of, this is what I was pulling up.
All right, on.
My illustrator put little create good trouble pirates in my second book.
Why haven't I got these for my? Hold on. No, what's on my wand? Can I get it from all your favorite online book retailers?
Because it's on Amazon, but also it's on other places. Like, because I put it up on Ingram Spark and made it available.
I'm trying. One of the, we have these big rules and small rules, don't we? There's a spectrum of them. My inner rules are closer to yours, actually. I think, around on that angle, I'm trying to. In this work, it sounds like close to what you've done and going into these stories, the story of failure, the story of feeling of failure. I've been trying to unravel and getting back to, and it's something that's plagued me, and I always thought, then drives me, and now I realize is a problem me, and more so than ever with our kids, and beginning to recognize the things that you pass on consciously, subconsciously, or otherwise. So the inner rebellion I am undertaking is definitely around the stories I tell myself to do with that horrible feeling. But one of the outer rebellions that I'm enjoying was trying to see if I go a year without buying anything from Amazon, and I'm enjoying it greatly. So I shall go and find your books on the non-Amazon retail.
Yeah. Have you bookshop.org? I think it's worldwide, but you can put in your local bookstore and then order it through there.
That's been my go-to place for these last 3 months.
Yeah, it's great because I'm like, I put it up through Amazon because self-publishing, it's the easiest way to go. But I love that you can make it available to little bookstores.
I wrote a book with my daughter for her 8th birthday and put it via Amazon, and now I've completely stitched myself up because I can't get a copy of the book that we wrote, because I'm trying to see if I can go a year without buying anything else.
Man.
Once again, in this call, I have 5 or 6 things that I am now taking from you that I need to go and learn. So this has been deeply instructive for me. I'm incredibly grateful for your time, the two of you, and all that you've done to take the spirit of piracy even further than I'd ever imagined.
Well, thank you for joining us, and maybe we'll have you back for 200.
Yeah,
in Seattle.
200. In
Seattle. Yeah. Well, and real quick before we go, we like to ask too about actions that our listeners could take to start their pirate lives. So coming from you, what is a small, bold action our listeners could start with for beginning their pirate life?
Interesting. I've been thinking a lot about a term known as safety behaviors. Safety behaviors is a psychological term, widely used, and rather than how it sounds, that it's going to provide you with safety, it's actually the opposite of that. It is a short-term, I think the psychological definition is roughly along the lines of a short-term avoidant behavior when confronted with the emotions, before the cognitive idea of it, but the emotions of feeling uncertain or discomfort. So a classic one could be A fight begins to start in my house. It's near bedtime. The kids are erupting, and all of a sudden, I find myself reaching for a bottle of wine. A safety behavior will numb the emotions of it, get you through the next hour of bedtime or whatever. Or a safety behavior can be, you're feeling stressed and worried about work tomorrow, and it's kind of creeping up on you, and all of a sudden, I'm in a fight with my partner. How did that fight begin? We've all been there before. And having learned about this, and one of the key things that triggers them is a sense of uncertainty. So as soon as you're pushed into a state of unknown, imagine if here's this really important piece of news, but I can't tell you right now. I'll be back in half an hour, and you'd be like, it's all itchy. What is it? And whatever it is that you do then in that moment, that'll be your classic safety behavior. Mm-hmm. And having learned about this, and we talk about it in the work we're doing with uncertainty experts, it's kind of one of the foundational things, and I hear it back again and again, and it's kind of become this game. And that's why I'll offer it as an easy inroad to all of the wonderful people listening. Can you spot your safety behaviors? Everybody has them, and they're kind of your frenemies, because that glass of wine does feel good, and that fight did make you feel better temporarily, but then long term they ain't. And typically we pick them up very young, and we've been carrying them with us all our lives. And if we've said, as we have, that there's a spectrum of piracy, that it's very much about ordinary people doing remarkable things, this is a gateway to not doing remarkable things. This is a little door we shut on ourselves. And as we said, the cost of being scared is much greater than the cost of being bravery. So it just takes this moment of spotting it. And it's like all kind of CBT and ACT. First stage is acknowledgement, and then accepting, and then adapting. And I offer it as a simple way of rule breaking. And I'm not going outside. I'm not a qualified psychotherapist or anything along those lines. But it's such a well-known discipline, and the action that you take is a very nice way to make a small rule break in your life. And I promise you, if you've kind of taken that on board, or you Googled the safety behavior, drop the guys a line and they'll pass it on to me. I'd just love to hear the safety behaviors that we all start to spot, because it's just a little way. It's like a simple way of playing I Spy with the rules in our lives that we kind of need to do something about. And why I like it is it's a deceptive baddie, right? It's even given itself a nice name to pretend that it's a friend, but really line them up and shoot them down.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be keeping an eye out.
Yeah.
Safety behaviors, you'll spot them everywhere. It's like emotional whack-a-mole. Bomb goes, bomb goes another one. Why am I online shopping? Boom.
Awesome. This has been so great having you on here and chatting with you, Sam. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple years in Seattle for number 200.
Well, know that I'm always here on the sidelines cheering and urging you on, and I'll be the wind in your sails whenever I can. If you've got that list of people you want on, if I know any of them, then just ask. Anything I can do to help.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.